If you recall earlier, I spoke about a lake that was, for lack of a better word, the Poo Lake, where all of the excrement and garbage and trash that was thrown out of the tenements and washed down by the rain ultimately came. This was the area. This was a lake. You did not want to go swimming or boating in this. Now the railroad station's there being developed, and there's a park to either side, it looks like. So we'll explore that for a few minutes. Another view of this building, whatever it is, and a little bit of those other interesting buildings. So we're now down inside the Lake of Poo, but not as deep as it could have been. And one of the punishments, or tests rather, of whether you were a witch was you were thrown in here with your feet bound to your hands, or your toes and your fingers tied together. And if you floated, you were obviously a witch, because the devil was holding you up. And as a consequence, you were then strangled until you were almost dead, and then burned at the stake before you had died. On the other hand, if you sunk, of course you drowned, then of course you were not a witch. Obviously, that's catch-22, typical church maneuver, but designed for more entertainment. When you read The Hunger Games, and I'm into the third book now, initially you're appalled that a society could have a government that had so much power that it could actually force children, people under 20 years of age, to go into an arena created for the entertainment of the masses in several districts, including the center district, and then slaughter each other, the last one to survive being a victor and living a glorious life in whatever district they came from. If you think, and I did, that that was so bizarre and repugnant, all I had to do was remind myself of what the Catholic Church did, and others. It's a pretty maple tree. At least I think it's maple, it may not be. Again, we're down inside Poo Lake, and it's probably not fair for me to keep calling it that since it's so pretty now, but it gives you a sense of the elevation here, doesn't it? How deep it could be. I don't know how deep it was. And of course, a sweet irony, used to play on words, of it now being be some kind of a birch tree rather than a maple, because that bark is reminiscent of a tree behind me that's got a white bark, and I'm reminded of the birch bark canoes of our North American Indians. Place for a park. Surprising that there are not more trees here, though. Here, another curious tree with a curious bulge on the trunk. Don't know if this is the same kind of tree that I've seen earlier on these travels. Here's some very pretty little flowers, but they seem to have been ravaged perhaps by the winds and the rains. Only Hollywood's CGs could create this. Pretty cupola on that building. There, looking across the railroad station at St. Giles, this building that I passed this morning and that you see from the Royal Way with that pretty dome. And there I believe the abandoned cathedral. This building that I'm not sure I've identified yet, those pretty buildings over there, built I think 100 years ago or so. And this is the Scott Monument that we've been looking at. There, a statue of the man. Don't know what Jenner's is, but again, those top floors are the interesting part of that building. Almost reminds us a bit of Elton John. Don't know what these spires are, looking in the direction the castle's in, but to its right. This is such a heavy, almost Germanic Nazi type building. Absolutely do not like it. Just a closer look at these buildings. Cowgate. I'm going up Robertson's Close because I want to see what looks like a church or something up here. Not really that exciting. Another huge imposing building. Dark because it is dark. And its architecture to me is heavy. Just some interesting building tops in the distance. Lotus. Certain austerity in these buildings, no matter how they embellish them with the curves. There's at least a mix of the industrial black girders in those sections, and the large stones and the different larger stones forming the corners and the windows and the doorway arches. That makes this building more interesting. This construction is apparently designed to combine these two buildings as well as create additional spaces for some purpose. Notice what look to be metal constructed or fabricated joists. It's interesting that even when building new, if this in fact is new, they still use the affectation of the external sewage cast iron pipes. I keep working my way into back streets hoping to find something interesting. Here at least, in this Coigny house close, is a nice garden area. It makes it quite pretty to look out your windows, as opposed to those courts that are just bare rock and some sparse trees. And here the entrance to St. Patrick's Church. And again here in what's probably we would call a development of some sort. It's at least a little bit prettier courtyard, which is kind of nice. Looking closely for these brass bricks, you'll see that they in fact outline what was the original gate. So I'm standing at a corner right now of the gate, and it would have gone off like this, rounded a bit. There's where you came through and extended over where that man is standing. You can see an angle there. And this was part of the Floridan Wall, and it was considered the end of the world as far as they were concerned. And so this is known as World's End. You wonder what it'd be like to live in one of those turrets, or turrets in this instance.